Welcome back to the Double L show. We are back. Last time it was a heat wave. This time we're going to get hit by a storm, and the sky
Oh
suddenly
no.
turned bright orange. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Roxanne Messina Captor. I'm a filmmaker and an educator. I am also the chair of the California Arts Council, appointed by our governor, Newsom.
The first question I have, and I put them all in order this time so I don't lose them. What is it like to be described as a triple threat in the industry?
Oh, well, that term comes from Broadway, and that was you have to be a singer, dancer, actor. And I was in Broadway. I started as a professional ballet dancer, and then I was in Broadway shows. And to get in those shows, you have to be a triple threat. So, and then it kind of does cross over into film and television when you write, direct, and produce. So I guess you could say that's a triple threat as well.
What's one of your favorite shows you've done on Broadway?
Uh, Chicago and Pippin.
Wow. Chicago's here, if I'm not wrong, because it's on tour at the moment. I think
It
it's coming
keeps
back.
it, it's the show that never ends.
Yeah.
It's on tour, it's playing in universities, it's fabulous. It's great.
I feel like I've seen it, but I don't really remember it that well. It was
It's
a
a whole
long
new
time ago.
generation now
Yeah.
watching it. Mhm.
When did you know that you wanted to perform?
Oh, I started as a child performer. I was taking ballet at 3, and I was doing musical theater as a child. I had my own local television show on the local CBS in Chicago. So there was no question that I was going to be great. I wanted to perform. No one would believe me now, but I was a very shy child. And so performing was where I came out and where I felt at home on the stage. And at 12, I got into the Chicago Lyric Opera Ballet, and that just stayed my focus for a long time.
What's it like growing up as like a child around that environment? Because there's a lot of like talk about it.
I thought it was fantastic because I had like these two worlds where I was in school with my school friends, and then I would go to to rehearse for a professional show or the ballet. And I was with, people from all over the world that were performing. It was a fantastic way to grow up.
Who is your role model or inspiration?
That's a hard one. I worked with Coppola, so I could say him, and Gene Kelly definitely, because I worked with him. And when I was dancing, definitely Makarova and Nureyev and Berezhnikov and that whole world of dance. I worked with Fosse, so Fosse, yeah, those are I think the people that I worked with are the people that inspired me and influenced how I do work in my career and how I live my life.
What's the best advice you've been given?
Always balance your personal life with your career. Don't
I
let one be out of balance.
Yes, I read that today. I saw that quote and I was like, that's so inspiring because sometimes it can get on top of you, all of the like, especially if you're juggling so many roles, you just end up snowed under.
Yeah, and it's not easy because as you know, being a creative, you have to be constantly working. You have to be always creating. And I was saying to someone else, it is a business. So you have your creative side that you're constantly creating, but then you have the business side that you have to do to keep everything, as I said earlier, balanced. So yeah, it's a juggling act.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like your hobbies, your creative kind of hobbies end up coming into the job, like crossing over?
Well, sometimes during COVID, I took up golf because the only thing that was open, the beaches were closed, the gym was closed, the parks were closed. So a girlfriend of mine said, the golf courses are open. We have to wear a mask. And even if the ball went into the hole, it had like a little special thing that popped it right out. So you never put your hand in there. We wore gloves. So but I got hooked because it's just such a fun game. And it is a game that you are outside, you're connecting with friends. And a long time ago, I directed Hal Linden in a play. And he said, you know, you're a dancer and you would really love golf. And I said, no, I'm not gonna chase a little white ball around. And then when I got hooked, I emailed him and he was thrilled that I had gotten hooked. He said, I told you it's just like dance because it's just you and the ball. And when you're dancing, it's just you and your body and getting it to where you want it to go.
Yeah. I love golf. I got taught playing up how to play, but I've never actually been on a golf course.
I actually got to play St. Andrews, which was really fun.
Wow. That's impressive. Well, I think I've seen it, if I'm not wrong, when I went to Scotland. Yeah. It's a bit of a blur because I don't think I was paying attention. What inspired you to change direction from performance to production and directing?
Well, when I was in New York, I got an offer to choreograph a show at a theater outside of the city of New York and the surrounding areas. And I was sitting at lunch with the producer, and we were talking about my ideas about how I would see the choreography for this piece. And I always believe the dance should heighten the story, you know, not to just choreograph because I like this style. It has to heighten the story. So he liked what I was saying. And then he said, what are you thinking for a salary? And I told him, and he said, okay. And I thought, this is fantastic. I am no longer on the street with a big sign on my chest that says 953 going to these auditions. I'm an adult. I'm at lunch with this person and we're talking about my ideas and he accepted the price that I wanted. And I said, I love this and I'm never turning back. So that was it. That was the beginning.
That's awesome. Honestly, you never know where like the next path takes you. It's like sometimes it's like, do you go this way? Do you go that way? And yeah, you never know where you're gonna end up, really. It's always a
Yeah, I was telling
mystery.
someone else, you know, you're focused, you're on this path and you're handling things, you're going the way you think you need to go, and all of a sudden something comes from over here and it just hits you. And that's the thing that is exactly where you're supposed to be and exactly what you're supposed to be doing and is the best thing for not only you as a person, but your career. But they always come from like, oh, where'd that come from?
I think that living in certain cities increases chances of success.
Unfortunately, yes. You know, there's just more opportunities to meet the people that can hire you in the bigger cities, in, LA or Chicago, New York, London, Paris, So I'd like to be able to say, yes, you could live in some of the smaller cities, but the reality is you have to go to those cities to meet the people that are hiring and to connect who you want to. I mean, in the small, there's been some unbelievable talent that's come out of like Austin, Texas, and some other, and people have stayed there. But a lot of those major directors that have come out of there do come to LA frequently to connect with studios and agents and whatever. And then they have their team. That's, I think, and that was interesting with Francis. He always had his team. So, and that's something you can really gain by going to film school is to get your team that you're going to work with the rest of your life.
Since I spoke of like regrets earlier, is there an opportunity you regret not taking?
That's a good question. There probably is, but I can't think of one right now. You know, I told someone else, this is a career of up and downs. This isn't like you go in a company and you work your way up and then you retire. It's a roller coaster. So somewhere when you're in the downs, there's probably a lot of times when you think, gee, why didn't I do this? So
Moving on to the category of filming and writing, what's your advice for up and coming directors?
for up and coming.
Yeah,
Uh, well, when I'm teaching, I tell my students, passion. If you don't have passion, get out because it's too hard. Perseverance. Um, Passion, perseverance, resistance. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to be resilient is what I meant, not resistance, resilient. And though without those types of things, it's really difficult because when you hit the downs, you've got to have something that's going to pick you up and move you forward. So I think you have to look at yourself and say, what is the best course for me? And am I really passionate about this? Am I going to be persistent? Am I going to keep going no matter what? And am I resilient? Can I get through the downtimes?
So I think a big one that I would like to start off, since obviously you know and was sort of mentored by one of, how do you even describe him? One of the most influential filmmakers just of all time, I'm going to say. So how did you end up meeting Francis Ford Coppola to begin with?
They were doing One from the Heart, and Gene Kelly remembered me from another project and said, I know this girl. If we can find her, she'd be perfect to be Terry Garr's dance-in. And Francis was building a studio where he was getting a core group of people that he was building other movies around. So, and I was Gene's assistant choreographer. So that's how it led. And I think we became close because we both have a classical background. I wasn't constantly saying, oh, I want to be an editor. I came from a classical background and I was happy in New York. So I was quite content to go back there if need be. So I think that's where the bonding happened. We could talk the same language, opera, theater, um, literature, you know. So that type of thing was the bonding.
So that shared background really helped the two of you sort of connect and get on.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I mean, I think that's good a lot of ways because if you find people who are like that who you can just talk and get on with yourself, then you know you can always sort of, I know, trust them, believe in them. Just know you can always be there.
You mean
Um,
like-minded?
like-minded, yes.
Yeah, then
ADHD
you
brain
have
working
to
today.
find that connection. And I always tell my students, it's fine to study the camera and the lighting and all that. And to train as a screenwriter is very important to get a good mentor in that area. Um, but without the basics, without knowing myths and um, you know, literature and plays and fairy tales, without having that as your basis, you've got nothing to work off of. Because bottom line, which you hear from everyone, is we're storytellers. And if you're a storyteller, you need to go back in history and realize what were the great storytellers. Mark Twain was a great storyteller. So those are
100%,
the
yeah.
types of things that what kind of the Greek myth, the Greek myths, the Greek plays that were done. Most there is that adage of there's only really five storylines in film, and most of it comes from Shakespeare or the Greek plays, so what makes someone a genius is how they can take that basis and turn it into something new and different and contemporary.
That is very true. Especially what you said about the whole, there's only like sort of four to five sort of stories. And that goes way back to the Greek because that is I remember reading in attending like a writing class. Yeah, oh God, this was years ago. And that's one of the first things they said is you can think you've got this massive idea, but every single film, the Hollywood, the ones who've won the Academy Awards and all that, if you look at the base of the story, they'll come down to four or five categories, and it's really interesting. You find out that dates back all that long while to the Greek, and we're still using that today.
And
That's
Star
really
Wars is
cool.
based on a myth, and I don't remember which one right now, but it is based on a myth.
If we want to go back to Coppola, what is the most valuable piece of advice or information he gave you?
If you're going to write words, you're writing plays. If you're writing film, it's a visual medium. You should be writing visual. So how can you say this without using words? How can you say it in pictures? So film is pictures, plays are words. So that was, and I always think, is there, you're writing away and you think, and you just blah, 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 blah. And then then I have to stop and say, can I say this visually and get rid of all the
That's actually
words?
a
How
really
can
good
I
piece
say
of
this
advice.
visually?
Yeah. And I think that's a piece of advice a lot of filmmakers need to take in because it comes down to that sort of show don't tell aspect in a way. Where I think a lot of people when this I don't know, I don't say like when they start now, but when they're very early in their careers, I think they do make that sort of mistake where they get too into the dialogue and not enough on the sort of storytelling through the sort of different visuals on the screen. I think they like to
Well, and
stick
if
to
you have good
basics.
actors, you see that in really good films when you have really good actors, that camera zooms in close, close, close on their eyes, and that tells the whole story right there. So that's, you have to have good actors too to be able to do that. So,
That's very true, yeah. If I want to go on to your teaching for a bit, it well comes to filmmaking too. When you're sort of mentoring the students, what's the most common sort of misconception you see about filmmaking?
well, the first one is they all think it's not a collaborative. And this is a collaborative art. There's no one person doing the whole thing and it's great. Anything great, you have a great team, great collaboration, and you see that with all the major filmmakers from Scorsese to, Lucas to all of them. They have their team. So, um, that is something a lot of them, they want to be, I guess the word auteur, they want to be I do everything and it's my way. And then most of them are not very good at communication. So learning to communicate to your team, learning to communicate to your subjects, learning to communicate your vision and getting it to out to both the actors and the subjects and the team, it's very important and not really a skill that most of the students come in with. So that's the thing we have to really train. And they learn it. They learn it the hard way, but they learn it.
Yeah, I usually do visuals. Like I'll go on Pinterest and I'll make a board inspired by what I'm thinking so everyone can have the idea of what I see
Yeah.
before even starting. So I'm
Well,
like,
that's like storyboards.
yeah, it's an easier way of
Pinterest is a
it.
great way to do it because I'm not a drawer either. Although there's great programs now to
Mhm.
storyboard. So I have not tried AI to storyboard. I wonder how that works.
I've never tried that.
I think
I
someone I
haven't
know
either, but
has.
I just thought of it. I thought, why not try that?
Yeah, I think someone I know has actually tried AI for storyboarding and it done it wrong. So that was
Yeah, that's the
something.
problem.
Yeah, it doesn't understand everything yet. Do you think that AI could take over writing or has already had that like impact?
Could take on what?
Like writing in general, could it take over the writer's job? I know that some people have been using it, but
I don't, well, not now. Maybe in the future, but not now. I've played around with it, and what I've found is it's very good at research. So if you put stuff in and you need research, it's really good at giving you the background, the history, whatever research you needed. But I did play around with it to see if what just for kicks, what sort of a scene it would write, and it was way off, way. So and the dialogue is stilted. So yeah, no, it's that at least now it's not going to replace a human whose passion and soul is going into a screenplay.
And it's what inspired your Academy Award nominated short, A Couple of White Chicks at the Hairdressers.
That there's I'm going to tell the whole story. So I was working on a project that I have that I wrote on Pearl Buck. It's a large project, a feature. We had everything in place, the star, the financing, prominent exec producer, everything was in place. And it was in December, just before Christmas, and the company that was going to finance it, the money fell out and they couldn't finance it. So I was like devastated. And so a friend of mine who's a prominent actor, we were having lunch and he said, well, you have a choice. You can go to bed for a month and cry, or you can look around and do another project. So I had this project, a couple of white chicks at the hairdresser, that was based on my best friend and I meeting at a Beverly Hills hair salon. And I started exploring what is it about these hair salons that make people tell their deepest, darkest secrets to strangers. And there's something about that rarefied atmosphere. And a lady that I knew when I ran the San Francisco International Film Festival in San Francisco said, you know, I really like this little project. I want to help you. So she gave me some money. I put some money in and we made the movie. And that was it. And it was absolutely the right thing to do. It's on Tubi. It was on Comedy Central. It's, as you said, it was, it was in the Cannes Film Festival Shorts section. And it's done very well, and it was, so it's done well. And it was a great, I hate when they say this, but it was a labor of love. And I had a great cast with Shelley Long and Harry Shearer, Kate Linder, James Kyson. And, it's done well and we've enjoyed it. And I've taken it to digital series now. It's called The Salon, and Harry's in that, and Kate also. And that's done well. So it's won the Indie Series Award Best Ensemble. So anyway, yeah, I think it comes back to passion. You got to, say, okay, that could have, and that was the best advice I got at that time because his friend said, okay, you can spend a month in bed or you can get out there and make another project.
When you came to adapting that into the salon, did you find any challenges adapting a short into a series, or was it fairly easy?
When I did a couple of white chicks, I always had a series in the back of my head. I was always thinking it would go series. So I think in the back of my head, I already kind of knew what I wanted to do as a series. The difference was we made it multi-generational, we made it multi-ethnic, we had a lead deaf character, and we did deal with as much as that rarefied atmosphere is kind of a light atmosphere, there's a lot of comedy. We did deal with a serious issue of gun legislation in schools. And so that came into play. So I'm always interested in that yin yang, comedy with drama, so because I think that's life. We're not always comedic, we're not always serious. We have a balance there. So that's the way I like to write, and that's the kind of projects I like to do. I'm also always looking at what's underneath. So on the surface, it may look like everything is so fabulous, but what's really underneath? What's making that character tick, and what are they really thinking?
Do you have any advice for those who want to set up their own companies?
Well, I don't think you should set up your own company till you've really been out there and working and getting your team together and all of that. So I think that is something you do later. I know there are some film students that come out of film school and set up a company right away, and that's fine. I mean, there's been a lot of YouTube creators that have done well by setting up their company and doing YouTube. But I think it's more, you need to get out there and work first and figure out where you fit into the scheme of things. And then and who's your team? And then you can set up a company and, because it's a lot of work to set up a company and run it. It's not easy. And it's a lot of legal, which costs money. So, it's not something you just do off the top of your head.
If you could write for any series or movie franchise, which one would it be?
Well, I love Amy Sherman Palladino's work. I like her style. And so I think any of the shows that she's done, Mrs. Maisel, Gilmore Girls in the old days, I just like her style. And I think I write similar. When I did White Chicks, Michel Simon, who's the head French film critic, he runs Positif. He said the writing was like Nora Ephron and the direction was like Robert Altman. And that was exactly what I was trying to do. And I that no one could have given me a better compliment because that is exactly the direction I wanted that film to be in. So I think that's, I love Nora Ephron's work too. I think those are writers that I resonate with because I write in a similar way. And I love that Altman is always kind of the in the back trying to figure out what that character's doing and what's that, and the camera's moving all the time. I also like sometimes, depending on the piece, the way Woody Allen does it almost like a play. So he keeps the camera in one place and the characters come in and out of frame. So that's another style, another technique.
Where's your favorite place to write or develop ideas? Because I've noticed a lot of people that either go to cafes or sometimes they'll go out and about and people watch.
Um, I write in my home office here, but I also sometimes will go to a cafe that's on the beach, do you know? So I'll do that too. It just kind of feels whatever I feel that day. I'm definitely somebody who the story and the characters mull in my head, and they mull and they mull, and I'm thinking about it all the time as I'm going about my daily life. And then all of a sudden, one day I'm ready. And so I just sit down at the computer, close that door, and I keep going and I just don't come out till I'm done. So it just kind of regurgitates out. I did a pilot for a series that I had sold to ABC called The Trujillos. It's about a Latin family. And that's what happened. I had written the story and sold it to ABC. And then when I was writing the screenplay, that was the way it happened. It just all sort of came out.
What's one thing that motivates your work? Because sometimes when you've got a lot of writing to do, it's hard to get started.
Well, like I said, I'm not one of these people who writes every day, that whole artist way. You have to write 3 pages every day. That's not me. That's not the way I work. So I let it mull. And when it needs to come out, it comes out.
Yeah, sometimes I need to find a like writing technique because I'll be sitting there and I'm like, I know I've got this much writing to do, and I'm just sitting there looking at it and I'm like, don't like it, scrap the whole thing. Then I'm like, what about this version? And I'm like, hate it, scrap that one as well. And I'm like, I'll just
Well,
leave it.
I
And
think
then
though you have to, at least in my opinion, you have to just get it out and not worry about is it good, is it bad, is it right, is it wrong? Just get it out and then let it sit and then go back and do a second draft or a third draft or give it to somebody else to redline, which I've had that happen that I've given it to people and they came back with red, red, red. I'm like, oh, geez, I got a lot to do.
what's one moment in your career that stands out?
One moment.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think when I first got into the ballet company, when I first got into a Broadway show, when I got the job working with Gene Kelly and Coppola, the first television movie that I produced that was nominated for an Emmy, I think those moments are key, you know.
How does it feel to be nominated for an Emmy? Like, what was the reaction to that?
Um, I don't remember. I just, we put it up. And then I had done this movie for a company and I said, should we try to get in the Emmys? And my boss said yes, and we put it up and then we got the notice it was nominated and we were like, oh, okay, great.
What made you want to talk about underrepresented stories and voices?
Well, as chair of the Arts Council, we are very adamant in helping all the arts in the state, especially underrepresented um, communities. So, and because I believe art is the great equalizer, and I have a phrase that I say, put art in the hands of children, not guns.
Mhm.
So that is kind of the motivation. I really, since I've been a child, I've been in the arts. So, and I've seen how the arts breaks down every barrier that could happen. So,
Are there any stories you'd like to cover in future? If so, what are they?
well, this Pearl Buck project, I really want to get made because she was an amazing woman. She won the Nobel and the Pulitzer Prize. And again, it's what's underneath. So here's this woman who changed the laws so that there could be interracial adoptions. She won those prizes. And yet, underneath it all, she tells her sister, I would give it all up if I could have one more natural child. So it's this yin yang of this spectacular woman on the surface, and yet feeling less of a woman underneath. So I think that's a really powerful story, and it's one I really want to tell. I have a couple series I want to do. There's a true story of a woman. I have all her rights. She was a CIA operative and a single mom. So that's a series we're trying to do. And it's a nice balance between uh, comedy and drama. I mean, it's drama and action as a CIA person, but there's also the comedy where she comes home and makes Halloween costumes. So there's that kind of thing. I have another series of books I've optioned that are called Murder in First Position, Second Position, Third Position. And it's a series dealing with a prima ballerina who meets a detective and they form a partnership and they solve crimes. So that's murder mysteries type of thing. Um, and I'm trying, there's quite a few different things that I'm working on, but those are kind of the keys that I remember right now.
Do you think people don't realize how important the arts are in everyday life?
I think in Europe they do. I think Americans are starting to realize it. But there's always a way to go because art is, when you're an artist, it's always looked at as a flaky profession. And that's the big change that I would like to see happen, where people look at people who are in the arts as it's just as important a profession and as viable a profession as a banker or a lawyer or doctor.
Do you think it's easier to be noticed now with all the technical, I can't even say that word, technological advancements? Has it become more saturated with talent?
You mean the industry?
Yeah, because it's basically open to a lot more people with social media and just technology, like people making their own content now.
Well, I think, there's a positive to that because, especially I tell my students, if you're learning, it's like a dancer. You have to do pliés every day. So if you're going to be a filmmaker, you better shoot every day, and now you have your iPhone and you can do it and you can do fairly good quality. So, I think there's a real positive to it. The negative is so many people can do this and not everybody has the skills or the talent. So, when I ran the festival, we'd get so many films coming in that were just not very good because everybody thinks they can pick up a camera and shoot. And it's, you put all this new technology in the hands of people who know what they're doing, and it's fantastic and brilliant. So, but it's also great to just keep learning. It's a way to keep learning.
Would you say there's still bias towards women in media?
Women have made great strides over the last 15 years, I guess. So you see more and more women in key roles. They're running networks, they're running studios, major companies, they're directing, they're writing. So I think, again, talent will always win out. That's the bottom line. And you could spend your life saying there's a glass ceiling, or you can spend your life doing the work.
How do you feel that in countries like ours, they're cutting all the funding towards the arts and scrapping courses because they're not worthwhile?
Well, that's been going on. That's always been going on. That's not new. You know, uh, it tends to be that when a school is having financial budget cuts, the place they cut, which is what you were talking about earlier, is the arts, and that's a mistake, I think. But that tends to be where they look to do it. So I don't know. I mean, this is not a new thing. We'll have to get through this like we got through it before. And as creatives, we have to come up with creative ways to still do our work.
Yeah, hopefully there's like ways here where we can inspire the next generation because they're not getting shown like the possibilities. It's just completely hidden from the curriculums now, which is really unfortunate.
There's posters going around that like advertised online. and it's like ballerina today, biochemist tomorrow, actor today, mathematician tomorrow, and it's like
I love
all of them
that.
are
I
targeting
love
the
that.
arts.
Great. That's great. And that's a post on what, Instagram?
It's posters on the streets, on Instagram, on
Ah,
Facebook, about like how they want people in the arts to retrain for different sort of jobs,
great.
sort of like normal jobs, as they would say it.
Right, right.
The last question I have is, do you think the industry is changing for the better, i.e. being more inclusive?
Yes, definitely. I think
Yeah,
that very much an awareness thing, and the awareness is there. This was
Yeah.
fun. Thank you. Good luck with all your projects, and
Oh,
thank
thank you.
you.
thank you for starting earlier.
No problem.
It's fine. We're both just like randomly talking about I don't even know what.
Oh, I can't remember.